Soho. And we want to say thank you to everybody and let you know and understand that Miss Jessie's brand is all about love. It's all about self-love. It's about loving your hair. And we hope that we've been able to help women kind of gain esteem when they're going from the relaxed hair process to the natural hair process.
Hi, I'm Titi Branch. I'm with Miss Jessie's, and we're here with mogulmediatv.com.
Hi, I'm Miko Branch. I'm here with my sister with mogulmediatv.com.
This story will hit you hard. A successful businesswoman who built a multi-million-dollar empire from nothing, nearly $1 million missing from her accounts, and a boyfriend who wiped her computer clean after her death. Titi Branch had everything: a revolutionary hair care brand that changed an entire industry, products flying off shelves at Target and Walmart, and the kind of success most people only dream about. But she was missing the one thing money couldn't buy: someone to love who would love her back. At 43, she thought she'd finally found him on Match.com. Anthony Spadafora called her his Lady Liberty and promised her the family she desperately wanted. What she got instead was 2 years of systematic manipulation that would cost her everything. December 4th, 2014. Dorset, 3 weeks before Christmas. Titi Branch was found dead in her Manhattan apartment. Within days, Spadafora was making claims to her estate and demanding her Cartier bracelet in exchange for returning her computer to her grieving family. When they got it back, the hard drive was completely erased. Hey, True Crime Malice family, drop your city in the comments. Let's see where you're watching from tonight. This case is going to leave you speechless. Titi Branch wasn't supposed to become a beauty mogul. Born in Jamaica, Queens in 1969 to an African-American father and Japanese-American mother, she was the book-smart tomboy who wanted to be a reporter. She earned her economics degree from the University of Maryland and worked as a field producer for WABC-TV, living the career she'd always planned. But life had different plans for Titi. In 1997, she and her sister Miko opened Curb Salon in Brooklyn's Boerum Hill neighborhood. They renamed it Miss Jessie's after their paternal grandmother, Jessie Mae Branch, a no-nonsense Southern woman who mixed egg and mayonnaise treatments at her kitchen table to help her granddaughters manage their naturally curly hair. Here's what most people don't realize about the beauty industry in the late 90s. If you had naturally curly, kinky, or textured hair, you were basically invisible. The shelves were packed with products for straight hair, but nothing for the millions of women struggling with their natural texture. Titi and Miko saw this massive gap and decided to fill it themselves. Drawing from their grandmother's DIY recipes, they started creating their own formulations: curly pudding, curly meringue, curly buttercrema, baby buttercrema. These weren't just products, they were revolution in a jar. By 2004, Miss Jessie's had exploded beyond their Brooklyn salon. Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, major retailers were fighting to stock their products. Titi had accidentally created something that would empower an entire generation of black women to embrace their natural beauty instead of fighting against it. The money was rolling in, the brand was thriving. Titi Branch had built an empire that was changing lives and making millions. But success came with a price. While Miko had her own family, Titi remained single and childless. She'd poured everything into building Miss Jessie's, and now at 43, she was staring at a different kind of emptiness. All the money in the world couldn't fill the hole where love and family should have been. She desperately wanted children. She wanted someone to share her success with. She wanted what every successful person eventually realizes they need: someone who loved them for who they were, not what they'd built. So in 2012, Titi Branch did what millions of people do when they're looking for love. She created a Match.com profile. She had no idea she was about to meet the man who would systematically destroy everything she'd worked for and ultimately cost her life. Anthony Spadafora's Match.com profile probably looked perfect. 43 years old, entrepreneur from Pennsylvania, ready for a serious relationship. When he matched with Titi in 2012, it seemed like fate. Their first conversations flowed easily. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in her success. Most importantly, he talked about wanting a family, the exact thing Titi had been longing for. He started calling her his Lady Liberty, painting this romantic picture of their future together. But here's what Titi didn't know. Anthony Spadafora was conducting research. Within weeks of meeting her, he'd learned about her clinical depression. Now, most loving partners would want to support someone through mental health struggles. Spadafora saw opportunity. According to court documents filed later by Miko, he began systematically exploiting Titi's vulnerability from day one. The relationship moved fast, too fast. Spadafora was talking about marriage, babies, building a life together. For a woman who'd spent years focused on business instead of love, this felt like everything she'd been missing. Finally, someone who wanted the same things she did. They started traveling together, Italy, France, romantic getaways that felt like scenes from a movie. Titi was sharing homes between New York and Pennsylvania. She was falling hard for this man who seemed to understand her dreams. But love bombing has a purpose, and Spadafora's purpose was becoming clear. The financial requests started small, a few thousand here and there for his business ventures. Titi was worth millions. What was a small loan to help the man she loved? Then the amounts got bigger, much bigger. Spadafora was launching his own business, Maestro's Classics, a beard care line. He needed startup capital. Who better to ask than his successful girlfriend? Titi handed over the money without hesitation. Then came the house, a $420,000 property in Pennsylvania that needed renovation. Spadafora convinced Titi this would be their family home, the place where they'd raise the children they were trying to have. She paid for the purchase and the renovations. His family needed help too. Could Titi loan him $50,000 to give $25,000 each to his mother and aunt? Of course she could. What about his son Anthony Spadafora Jr.'s student loans? Titi covered the $35,000 without question. Titi looked around and called out, "You're not wasting it." An easy question here. There had been all that time Anthony Spate was quitting high school with $50,000 in debt and working 2 other jobs, even his mother's therapy sessions. $2,000 that Titi paid for. But the most insidious part wasn't the money, it was the isolation. Spadafora began creating distance between Titi and her support system. Family dinners became less frequent. Friends noticed she was harder to reach. Business meetings with Miko became tense. Slowly but surely, Spadafora was becoming Titi's primary source of emotional support, which gave him incredible power over her mental state. Have you ever had a gut feeling about someone your friend was dating? Maybe they seemed too good to be true, or something just felt off? Tell me about it in the comments, because Titi's family was starting to get those exact feelings about Anthony Spadafora. Meanwhile, Titi was undergoing multiple rounds of IVF treatments, desperate to have the baby that would complete their perfect life together. Each failed attempt left her more emotionally drained and more dependent on Spadafora's support. The stress was taking its toll on every aspect of her life, including her relationship with Miko. The sisters, who had built an empire together, were starting to clash over business decisions and management styles. By 2013, Spadafora had extracted hundreds of thousands of dollars from Titi's accounts. But that was just the beginning. What happened next would shock even her closest family members, and set the stage for the most devastating betrayal of all. By 2013, Anthony Spadafora had perfected his system. In just 2 years, he'd managed to extract approximately $900,000 from Titi Branch's accounts. Let me break down exactly how he did it, because the numbers will blow your mind. $420,000 for that Pennsylvania house and renovations, the one he convinced her would be their family home. $135,000 as an interest-free loan that was never intended to be repaid. $50,000 split between his mother and aunt. $35,000 for his son's student loans. $2,000 for his mother's therapy, plus additional funding for his beard care business. In exchange for nearly $1 million, Titi received absolutely nothing. No ownership in the house, no stake in his business, no legal protections. Just promises and manipulation. But the financial abuse was only part of Spadafora's strategy. The psychological warfare was far more devastating. He'd learned to weaponize Titi's depression against her. When she questioned his spending or tried to set boundaries, he'd remind her how lucky she was to have someone who loved her despite her mental health struggles. He made her feel like she was the problem, like her depression made her difficult to love. The isolation was working perfectly. Titi's relationship with Miko was deteriorating rapidly. The sisters who had built Miss Jessie's together were now clashing constantly over business management styles. What had once been a partnership built on love and shared vision was becoming a source of daily stress. In September 2013, the breaking point came. Titi and Miko had such a severe falling out that it fundamentally changed everything. The details of their fight remain private, but the consequences were immediate and devastating. Titi made a decision that would haunt her family forever. She removed Miko as the beneficiary of her $2 million life insurance policy and replaced her with Anthony Spadafora. Think about that for a moment. A woman who had built an empire with her sister, who had shared everything with her family, was now putting a man she'd known for less than 2 years ahead of the people who had loved her since birth. This wasn't love. This was the result of systematic manipulation by someone who understood exactly how to exploit vulnerability. Meanwhile, Titi's desperate attempts to have children were failing repeatedly. The IVF treatments were physically and emotionally brutal. Each negative result sent her deeper into depression, and each depressive episode gave Spadafora more control over her life. The stress was destroying her from the inside out. Business pressures, family conflict, relationship manipulation, and the crushing disappointment of failed fertility treatments created a perfect storm of emotional turmoil. But Spadafora wasn't done yet. In 2014, Titi discovered something that should have ended their relationship immediately. Spadafora had allegedly made sexual advances toward her personal trainer. When she confronted him about this betrayal, any normal person would have expected the relationship to be over. But Spadafora had other plans. According to court documents filed by Miko, when Titi tried to end the relationship, Spadafora pulled out his ultimate weapon. He had taken compromising photographs of her during their time together, and he threatened to release them publicly. This wasn't just about embarrassment. Titi was the face of Miss Jessie's brand. Her reputation was directly tied to her business success. Spadafora knew that releasing those photos could destroy not just her personal life, but her professional empire as well. This is what experts call revenge porn, using intimate images as a weapon to control and manipulate. It's a form of abuse that traps victims in toxic relationships because the cost of leaving seems too high. So Titi stayed, not because she loved him, but because she was trapped by his threats. The woman who had revolutionized an industry, who had built a multi-million-dollar empire from nothing, who had empowered countless women to embrace their natural beauty, was now being held hostage by compromising photos and emotional manipulation. The isolation was complete. Her relationship with Miko was fractured. Her friends had been pushed away. Her mental health was deteriorating rapidly. The IVF treatments continued to fail, and the man she'd trusted with her heart, her money, and her future was using every weapon in his arsenal to keep her under his control. By late 2014, Titi Branch was trapped in a prison of her own making, funded by her own money, and controlled by a man who had systematically destroyed every support system she'd ever had. But the most shocking revelation was still to come. A decision that would expose just how completely Spadafora had taken control of her life. December 2014, 3 weeks before Christmas. Titi Branch was living in what can only be described as psychological hell. The failed IVF treatments had left her physically and emotionally shattered. Spadafora later described her as drained and despondent from the repeated failures to conceive. At 45, time was running out for the family she'd always dreamed of having. Her business empire was still generating millions, but the joy was gone. The partnership with Miko remained fractured. The woman who had once been her closest confidant and business partner was now a source of stress and conflict. And Anthony Spadafora? he was tightening his grip. The threats about the compromising photographs kept Titi locked in their toxic relationship. She couldn't leave without risking everything she'd built. She couldn't stay without losing herself completely. It was a trap with no escape route. On December 4, 2014, that trap finally closed. Titi Branch was found dead in her Midtown Manhattan apartment. The cause of death was ruled suicide by hanging. She was 45 years old, just months away from what should have been the prime of her life. But here's where this story takes a turn that will make your blood boil. Within hours of Titi's death, while her family was still processing the devastating loss, Anthony Spadafore was already making moves. He didn't call to offer condolences. He didn't ask how he could help with funeral arrangements. Instead, he started sending emails to Titi's grieving parents, claiming that she had drafted a new will, giving him 50% of everything she owned. Think about the audacity of that. A woman is dead, her family is in shock, and this man is immediately trying to claim half of her multi-million-dollar estate, based on a will that conveniently appeared after her death. But Spadafora wasn't finished. The family needed Titi's computer to handle her business affairs and understand what had happened in her final weeks. When they asked Spadafora to return it, he didn't just hand it over like any decent human being would. He held it hostage. Spadafora told the grieving family that he would only return Titi's computer in exchange for her expensive Cartier bracelet. Let that sink in for a moment. He was literally ransoming a dead woman's computer to her own family. The family was desperate for answers and needed access to Titi's files to manage her business affairs. They had no choice but to comply with his demands. They handed over the Cartier bracelet, probably worth thousands of dollars, just to get back what should have been returned immediately. When they finally received the computer, they discovered the most shocking betrayal of all. The hard drive had been completely wiped clean. Every email, every document, every piece of evidence that might have shown what really happened in Titi's final months, gone, erased, destroyed. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a technical malfunction. Someone had deliberately scrubbed that computer clean, removing any digital footprint that might have revealed the truth about Titi's final weeks. The timing was too convenient, the demands too calculated, the erasure too complete. Spadafora had spent 2 years systematically extracting money from Titi's accounts. He'd isolated her from her family. He'd exploited her mental health struggles. He'd trapped her with threats of revenge porn, and now, with her dead, he was trying to claim half her estate while destroying any evidence of what he'd done. The family was left with nothing but questions and a growing suspicion that Anthony Spadafora knew far more about Titi's death than he was letting on. But Miko Branch wasn't going to let her sister's story end there. She was about to launch a legal battle that would expose the full extent of Spadafora's alleged manipulation and abuse. The computer might have been wiped clean, but the financial records were still intact. The court documents were about to reveal a pattern of exploitation so systematic and cruel that it would shock even seasoned legal professionals. The fight for Titi's legacy was just beginning, and the truth about what really happened in those final months was about to come to light. Miko Branch wasn't going to let her sister's death be the end of the story. She filed a lawsuit in Manhattan Supreme Court that would blow this case wide open and expose Anthony Spadafora's alleged crimes in devastating detail. The court documents painted a picture so disturbing that it read like a textbook case of financial and psychological abuse. Miko's legal team laid out exactly how Spadafora had allegedly operated, targeting a vulnerable woman with clinical depression, isolating her from her support system, and systematically draining her accounts while maintaining complete psychological control. But Spadafora wasn't going down without a fight. His defense strategy was as calculated as everything else he'd done. He flipped the script entirely. According to Spadafora, he wasn't the villain in this story, Miko was. He painted himself as the loving boyfriend who had tried to save Titi from her own family's toxic dynamics. He claimed that Miko was the bully of Brooklyn, whose aggressive management style had driven Titi to the breaking point. The sisters loved each other but had different management styles, Spadafora told reporters. As tensions grew, Titi couldn't take the stress. His version of events was simple. Titi had voluntarily distanced herself from Miko because of their business conflicts. The life insurance beneficiary change wasn't the result of manipulation. It was Titi's own decision after their September 2013 falling out. She was changing everything, Spadafora claimed, suggesting that Titi had made these financial decisions independently. He described their relationship as genuine love, calling it real and emphasizing his dedication to her. The trips to Italy and France, the shared homes, the attempts to start a family, all of it was authentic in his telling. When it came to the money, Spadafora's defense was that everything had been given willingly. Titi was a successful businesswoman who made her own financial decisions. If she chose to invest in his business ventures and help his family, that was her choice as an adult. The computer situation, Spadafora claimed the family was trying to paint him as a villain when he was just protecting himself from false accusations. "They're trying to paint me as a villain," he said. "I don't want to see this turn into a war." But the numbers told a different story. $900,000 extracted in 2 years. A pattern of financial requests that escalated systematically. The timing of the life insurance change, the immediate claims to her estate after her death. The legal battle became a he said, she said between two completely different versions of Titi Branch's final years. On one side, Miko's lawsuit alleged systematic abuse and manipulation by a predator who had targeted her vulnerable sister. On the other side, Spadafora claimed to be a grieving boyfriend whose genuine love story was being twisted by a family looking for someone to blame. The court would have to decide which version was true. Miko's case hinged on proving undue influence. The Spadafora had used his knowledge of Titi's mental health struggles to manipulate her into making financial decisions she wouldn't have made otherwise. The lawsuit alleged that he had wielded exceptional control over Titi while being fully aware that her mental health was severely compromised. Spadafora's defense relied on portraying Titi as an independent businesswoman who made her own choices, even if those choices seemed questionable to her family after the fact. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If Miko won, it would validate her claims that Spadafora had systematically abused and exploited her sister. If Spadafora prevailed, he would potentially inherit millions from the woman whose death had made him wealthy. But beyond the money, this case was really about something much more important. The truth about what happened to Titi Branch in her final months. What do you think really happened here, Team Miko or Team Anthony? Let me know in the comments below, because this legal battle would ultimately reveal disturbing truths about how predators operate and how successful people can become targets for the worst kind of exploitation. The final chapter of this story would determine whether justice could be served for a woman who could no longer speak for herself. The legal battle between Miko Branch and Anthony Spadafora exposed something terrifying about how financial predators operate in plain sight. This wasn't a random crime, it was a calculated campaign that targeted specific vulnerabilities. Titi's depression, her desire for family, her isolation from support systems. Spadafora didn't just steal money, he studied his victim and crafted a strategy designed to extract maximum wealth while maintaining complete control. The red flags were there from the beginning. The rapid relationship escalation, the immediate financial requests, the systematic isolation from family and friends, the exploitation of mental health struggles. But when you're desperate for love and family, those warning signs can look like devotion and commitment. Titi's story reveals how successful, intelligent people can become victims of sophisticated manipulation. Her wealth made her a target. Her depression made her vulnerable. Her desire for children gave Spadafora leverage. Her business success provided the funds for her own exploitation. The most chilling part? The computer wipe suggests this was planned from the beginning. Someone who truly loved Titi would have preserved her digital legacy for her family. Instead, every trace of their relationship was systematically destroyed the moment she died. Today, Miss Jessie's continues to thrive, carrying forward Titi's vision of empowering women to embrace their natural beauty. But her personal story serves as a warning about the predators who target successful people during their most vulnerable moments. The signs to watch for: partners who isolate you from family, rapid financial escalation in new relationships, threats used to maintain control, and anyone who exploits your mental health struggles for their own gain. If you recognize these patterns in your own life or someone you love, reach out for help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-7233. Financial abuse is real abuse, and no one deserves to be trapped by threats or manipulation. Titi Branch revolutionized an industry and empowered millions of women. She deserved to be loved for who she was, not exploited for what she'd built. Her legacy should inspire us to create better support systems and remain vigilant against those who would prey on vulnerable people. Subscribe if you want more cases that expose how predators really operate, and hit that notification bell. Remember, stay safe out there, True Crime Malice family. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who claim to love us most.